Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This time out, our own Nick DiVirgilio sits down for a drummer-to-drummer conversation with Vinnie Colaiuta, one of the all-time greats. Vinnie is here recording in the Sweetwater Studios with his group Jing Chi, consisting of Robben Ford and bassist Jimmy Haslip. They're making a new album here. They had a lot to talk about as far as that goes, as well as his background as a drummer and what it takes to be a great drummer these days. Check this out.
How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, and my very special guest in house today is Mr. Vinnie Colaiuta. Sir.
Hey, Nick.
Welcome.
Thanks
for coming
me.
to Sweetwater. It's your first time here?
Yeah.
And what do you think of the place?
It's unbelievable. It's really, I had no idea what this would be like. It's an amazing place. I had no idea that it would be its own ecosystem, which it is, and it's great in that regard. I think it's just great for everybody. That's for the whole staff here, and for people like us to come to visit. You know,
yeah.
It's just everything's under one roof, and you've got this amazing recording facility here, video facility, food court, doctor. And
even a doctor.
Yeah, even a doctor.
You don't feel sick though, I hope.
No, I feel good.
Good.
Thanks. And it's fantastic. I literally had no idea. And the studio's been very comfortable. The gear, everything I'm used to playing is there, and I feel comfortable. Everything sounds great. I was dumbfounded, you know. It's really amazing.
Cool.
You guys have a great operation here.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pretty fun place to work. Now you're here with two other amazing musicians, Robben Ford and Jimmy Haslip, recording a project, the Jing Chi. Am I saying that correctly? Jing Chi, yeah? And how's that going? Is it fun? You guys making some good music, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really great fun, and of course, you know, my cohorts, Robben and Jimmy, are amazing, and it's great because we have a great friendship as well. So we go way back, and we always have fun because even though, you know, we all have our sort of identities, we have a good chemistry, and we're all like open books.
Right.
So anything can happen, and we're very amenable to all kinds of ideas.
Right.
And so and we, you know, it's been a while since we've done a project, so it was time to do another one. And this one's really interesting because it's more of a conceptual kind of an album, meaning that, how can I say this? There's just a sort of overriding concept of what the whole thing should be versus just any kind of tunes, you know, that we mix together, which we did that on the other records, but we still made it cohesive. But this one is a little more maybe cinematic. I don't know. Okay. I don't mean that to be that it's grandiose or anything like that, but it's just it's kind of like little environments, you know. It's very cool.
Well, from what I heard, it sounded really great. Some serious grooving going on. It's really nice.
Yeah. There's a lot of groove-oriented stuff, and it's really cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now you've had a long and storied career. I was checking out your website, and I think it's really great. Your discography page, well, it's 32 pages long. Your discography, right? So you've played with just about everybody under the sun in all kinds of different styles of music, from metal to fusion, everything in between. You know, pop, jazz, country. So how do you attribute your ability to go to all these different styles and make it feel good? How do you switch from playing in a country project to, you know, your craziness with Zappa and Joni Mitchell, where you're sort of outside, and then to Duran Duran or even Megadeth? I mean, you've really kind of covered a huge variety of stuff. How do you jump in between those different styles?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, during my formative educational years, I always listened to everything, and I didn't really differentiate between genres. I just embraced everything, and I had so much music coming at me, just all kinds of different music. It was a very fertile period of creative growth in music, and at that time, and I think that just, you know, beginning my music education, I sort of embraced everything. I never really thought about those kinds of barriers, you know, and it never occurred to me. Music was either good or bad to me. So I think that when you really just love listening to all kinds of music and you're learning, then it's not something that you feel like you have to decipher.
Okay.
You don't really feel like you have to go into this decipher mode where you're sort of thinking, okay, I don't really get what this is about, but I'm going to deconstruct it and study it and kind of paint by the numbers and learn the sort of rules, so to speak, and try to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That process never really, so I think that eventually I started getting into doing sessions, and I was confronted with having to do that. And so if there were some types of things that I wasn't that familiar with, I would just listen and try to sort of practice and get in the, my whole thing is just to get into the whole character of it.
Okay.
The whole, what is it about? Much more so than saying, well, this is the kind of pattern that you play.
Right.
Because then I feel that if you do it that way, then you have to find a home for those patterns and you have to figure out why you're learning a pattern versus going in there thinking, well, I've got this vocabulary of, 20 beats that work for this kind of music and I'll just pick one.
Right.
It doesn't, so I think if you can kind of get inside the concept and open yourself up to what that music is saying to you, then the other things will follow. I just think in general that seems to be the way it is for me anyway.
Sure.
Some people think it's like being like an actor, or I've been called a chameleon, but really all I do is just kind of listen to it and immerse myself in it and say, well, okay, what are you telling me? Let me just, it's like stepping inside of a picture.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you step inside and you go, well, it's kind of cold, I need a coat. It's raining, I need an umbrella, and it really is that.
Okay.
I think concept rules, and I think a lot of times nowadays it seems to be that the focus has shifted a little bit on some extreme technical facility, but it's like you have to have everything is context and concept.
Sure. I was going to ask you, that kind of leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
What do you think of today's crop of musicians and drummers specifically? Because there's a lot of great guys out there, and gals, who can really play their butts off. How do you feel about today's musicians?
I think that there's a lot of great players. It's so that's unquestionable.
Okay.
So I can only sort of, I think that the environment today is a little different because everyone has a chance to be seen and heard. So
that's true. Yeah.
There's always two sides of anything, and so the thing is that you've got content pouring at you constantly. So trying to sort of stand out above the crowd, it happens occasionally, and I think that it's great that you can get this kind of accelerated sort of learning through modeling things with video channels.
Right.
But I can say that from my own experience, that as good as that is, I think that sometimes you can get stuck in modeling phases, and sometimes these environments can be breeding grounds for homogeneity, and so I can sort of flip back through my own history and corroborate that with other people from the era that I grew up in, whereby we've sort of spoken with this with various people about this. It's like individual voices were championed, and so somehow you had to find whoever you were.
Right.
And a counter argument to that would be, well, how do you do that today when there's so many people? Everybody's unique. Everybody is unique. So you just have to take that same vocabulary and sort of, somehow just be yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's all you've got.
Right.
So, I have mixed thoughts about a lot of it. But I think that there are a lot of people on every instrument that have a ton of facility.
Sure.
And it's great. And so people want to play. And it's a good thing. It can only be a good thing,
You started as a young kid.
Yeah.
How did you fall into the drums? I mean, even before you got your first drum kit, was it something
I think
that
they fell into me.
were you just drawn to it as a young boy?
Yeah, it's you know how you just when you see a child just gets drawn to certain things that they like, and there's no. It's almost beyond analysis. It's just some people are just, I think, born with something like that they gravitate towards too. It could be anything. Some kids maybe want to play baseball and they just start playing with baseball or whatever it is. But for me, I was always doing that ever since I can remember. It just gravitating towards just music in general. Music really spoke to me, and I was always the typical kid that was just beating on things and taking silverware and and pots and pans, and then came the toy drum kits and then the semi-pro kits that I kept breaking, and then it was that progression. And for me, it was just like I could just sit down behind the drum set and play. I never had a problem with let's see, this foot does, and what does this do, and so I don't know. It was just a natural thing for me.
Do you remember what your very first drum kit was? Like your first real drum kit?
Yeah, it was a Rogers kit, and I remember that I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't know, I was maybe 6 or something, and that was it. I had to have Ringo's drums, so that really it impacted me. So by the time I ended up getting a pro kit, I was trying to find Ringo's drums and nobody had them in stock. So the music dealer, the local music dealer, said, "Well, here I have these Rogers," and they were this kind of psychedelic swirl color, and they were great drums. They were great drums, and I had them, through my high school years and stuff, okay. and then I, by the time I got to college, I was exposed to that great Gretsch sound, right. Which it really is, and it just impacted me really deeply as well, and it just. I said, yeah, this is it,
Awesome.
Yeah.
You went to Berkeley,
yeah.
Berkeley College of Music,
mm-hmm.
and I was interviewing Russ Miller just the other day, and my question for you is, how important, since you've done a lot of jazz music in your career, how important is that as a basis of learning? Because I'm not sure, and my reason I ask is a lot of young players today, I don't know if they get exposed to that kind of stuff and that kind of education as young players as much as they used to. How do you feel is that as a basis of a player?
I mean, as a starting point?
Yeah. Do you think it's really important to have that kind of vocabulary in your bones?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's a really broad arena when you just say jazz, because first of all, it deals with an overriding improvisational concept. But the approach on the drum set to that is, it is possible that you could develop an approach and a touch based on, the fact that you want to choose certain sound sources that honor that kind of music, right. That will enable you to play dynamically. And so if you get used to doing that and physiologically adapting yourself to that, will it translate to if you suddenly want to start playing death metal? Maybe not.
Okay.
But if you just take some of the elemental parts of what you might call jazz, and you just look at it conceptually and the sort of time feels and the concept of swing and I mean, it's definitely by and large invaluable. So I think it depends on what you want to be.
Right.
But the short answer is absolutely.
Okay.
Because those things, that vocabulary can cross-reference into, and everything's kind of mixed together now.
Sure.
It's yeah.
Okay, it's really cool information there.
Yeah.
So leads me to another question, kind of in the technical side of things. Since you played a lot of sort of outside music, some hard stuff with Zappa or whoever else, How do you stay centered when you're getting into some of the really odd metered stuff? Do you stop thinking about where this groove is in 13 or 19 or whatever, and you start going over the bar line? Are you always thinking that bar, or you just kind of always know where one is and you kind of forget about it and just play? Because it seems like you have such a freedom when you do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you learn it by counting it and by counting subdivisions, and those subdivisions become like just, you might hear one large bar of an odd time and you feel those subdivisions. And that's kind of what it is for me.
Okay. I'm
not really counting as much as I'm feeling those subdivisions because I know what they are. But you have to learn it by counting it. I think just in terms of the learning process of it, for anybody,
right.
you know, in general, you have to do that and to the point where you can feel it. Some people can feel it and they don't even know what they're playing. So then they have to learn. It's like learning to speak and then you learn the grammar.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for those who maybe they can't naturally feel it as well, I think it's probably, because see, the other thing is everybody has different learning modalities. Some people are visual, some people hear, some people have to be hands-on. Right. So I think that showing them what it is and enabling them to sort of look at it in all of its perspectives, you know, counting and seeing and all that sort of stuff, and they can go, oh, okay, that's what it is, you know, and then the idea is for it to be internalized. But for me, you know, I spent a lot of time learning how to read when I was a kid because I really enjoyed it.
Right.
Some people hate it, but I was one of those kids that just ate it up. I loved it. I was always kind of a nerdy kid anyway that read and studied things, and as well as the creative aspect of it. So for me, getting that information enabled me to get to the point where I could just feel it, because how can I say this? I would be able to understand and feel these different metric combinations in various permutations. Right. And various combinations of however they exist, and so I would practice that, and that helped me to instantly identify, you know, any kind of bar of whatever in whatever permutation. Having said that, though, I think that there are some ways that feel more natural than others, okay. And so we generally gravitate towards those things, you know, and so by the time I had ended up, you know, playing with Frank, I had this information, and so I mean, I understood it. Okay. I understood the language, and I really enjoyed it, you know.
That's wow. Yeah, as we all did, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Now let's get on to that great Gretsch sound that you've been playing with for a long time. Your gear. How important is that sound and that feel to the music you make? It's
vitally important for me, because I have to know what I'm getting whenever I sit down at a drum kit, and so that sound is a unique sound, right. in drums, and it's very identifiable and consistently identifiable, and so and I've gotten used to the feel of it, so I, you know, my whole conceptual playing has become enmeshed in that, right. over the years. So yeah, it's vitally important to me. And I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that. You know, just the way that the shells are built and the fact that they have die-cast toops, right. Those kinds of things create a certain feel. You know, all these things. And when you hit the drums and the tom-toms, when they open up, you hear this timbre that you just know. I mean, I know it, and I can feel it, and it's all those things affect your concept. Sure. I think, and so the thing about those drums is that, for one thing, I can play anything on those drums, but I know that if I'm going to play anything that's has a certain kind of jazz element or creatively speaking, the kind of sound I get out of them, it just makes that want to happen. And you know, depending on what head combinations or how I tune them, I can play anything on them. Right. And it's, you know, it's amazing because I've played Gretsch drums that I can tell you. Once I was in London doing a session and I ordered some from Backline and they were so trashed that, I mean, it was, you know, I don't know what I did, one of the tom legs was falling apart and they were all scratched up and just beat like they'd fallen down a mountain or something, you know. And I just set them up and played them and they sounded incredible. It's just, you couldn't kill them.
Right.
And I've had, you know, where I've just had heads on there that were just destroyed. Just tune them up, and it's almost like they'll just keep going and going and going until the head basically splits.
Right.
They just always sound great, you know, and I don't have to think about that. Like there has to be a certain kind of head on it, and it has to be tuned a certain way. They just, no, nope.
Do their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the things that matter to me, you know.
Well, Vinnie, thank you so much for coming to Sweetwater. Wish you all the best with the project with Robben and Jimmy.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming to Sweetwater. Please come back again. Good
Thanks.
luck with all your future endeavors. It's really been a blast sitting here talking with you.
Thanks. Likewise, Nick. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks to Sweetwater, too.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with Vinnie Colaiuta. My thanks to Nick DiVirgilio. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.